Welcome, everybody, to the Seasons Leadership Podcast, where we are committed to leaders everywhere at all levels who want to make progress on their leadership journey. We will bring you actionable advice to improve your leadership and life today.
Thank you for joining us. At Seasons Leadership, we share a vision to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard. Learn more at seasonsleadership.com.
Hello, and welcome everybody to the Seasons Leadership Podcast. Today, you've got Susan and I here together, and we are the co-founders of Seasons Leadership, and we're talking about some questions that we had some listeners send in to us, and we're very curious about. And we said, hey, these are great questions. We want to spend some time talking about them and answering them. So we're just going to get started.
Yeah.
And I suggest we do it this way. Susan, I'll ask you a question and then you answer it and then I'll answer it. And then we'll go to the next one, vice versa.
Perfect.
All right, let's start. Okay. How did you decide you wanted to transition into leadership and then eventually being an executive?
Well, I will tell you that I never, in my wildest dreams, when I was first starting out in my career, ever thought like, oh, I want to be an executive. I mean, that was not part of even my world, even anything. I mean, it sounded crazy. So if I could tell my younger self something, it is like dream bigger. But the way I kind of moved into this is that I really liked the work that I was doing. I was doing program management, business operations type work, and I love the connecting the dots and seeing how the overall business worked. And that just evolved my desires to want to have a bigger impact and do more. And in order to do that, I needed to expand my scope of responsibilities. So then the positions became apparent. So that's what came first. The work came first, and then the positions came later. It was kind of a way to do what I wanted to do.
And then what about the executive part of it?
Well, the executive part of it, I don't know. That's it. It's kind of a crazy question because I didn't ever think of it that way. I just kept thinking of it as I wanted to be able to make a bigger impact. And I felt that I had a lot of good ideas and that I could make a bigger impact and make a big difference in the business. And the way to do it was into the executive ranks. And so that's what drew me in there.
Got
So,
it.
yeah. How about you?
I would say mine was a little bit different in that regard. I was a leader at a very young age. I was in the military and I got selected for leadership positions almost immediately. In basic training, I was selected for a squad leader position. And the drill sergeant called me in and said, hey, you're going to be the squad leader. Like, what? I was just trying to survive at that point.
Yes.
And then that just kept happening to me. People kept doing this with me in the military. And I was leading quite a few people at a really young age, but I don't know what they saw in me, but I didn't see that in myself. So it was the same as you in that regard. I didn't think about ever being an executive, or it wasn't something I aspire to being a leader than an executive. No, I just wanted to do a good job at whatever I was doing, and they saw something in me and put me in leadership positions. Then when I came to Boeing, and at that time it was a subsidiary or a different company that ended up merging with Boeing. But when I came there, I was like, okay, I'm done with leadership. I just want to nose down, do a good job, do my work, go home every day, because leadership's a responsibility, as we both know, right? And I was ready to be a little bit, carefree and not have those responsibilities. Well, that didn't last very long. The first job I was in, the director of that position said, hey, we're reorganizing and we're going to put people over this small group that we're forming, and we want you to take the role. So I was right back into it again. I was right back into leading. And then I finally said, okay, I'm good at this. I can do it. Let's just keep going. So I wouldn't say that I had a plan, a career plan or 5-year plan. Oh, I'm going to be a leader, then I'm going to march up the ranks and be an executive. Like you, crazy. I would never thought I would be an executive ever,
Right.
especially in a company like Boeing. But I just kept that philosophy, do the best job I can in every role I'm in, and it just came to pass.
Right.
So um, yeah, I guess we neither one of us really decided. It decided for us
Right.
that we
Which,
were called to the role.
well, but it kind of goes back to both of us. I mean, I would say, if I could give advice to my younger self or people in the workforce today looking to what's next, is that's not the way to do it. I would,
No, you should take charge of your own career.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely. But we
And
can't say that we did that. It was more like the
exactly,
work,
it
doing
was.
a good job, and then it happened.
It was, but I do wonder if we would have taken more agency in our own careers earlier. What would that have been like? I don't know, but I'd like to think that maybe I could have made even greater of an impact.
I agree with
So
you. I absolutely agree with you on that, which is
yeah,
the whole reason we started Seasons Leadership, right?
exactly, exactly. Okay, so I get the second question.
All right.
If you had a DeLorean or a time machine,
Mhm.
what is the inflection point in your career that you would reapproach if you had the opportunity? That's a
Wow.
fun
That's
one.
a cool question.
It is a fun one.
I actually want to ride in the DeLorean time machine. That would be really super cool. Um, I think what I would do is what we were just talking about. I would go back to when I kept getting put into these leadership roles, and I would be more purposeful about it. I would be more purposeful, not about just the roles that I got, but being a leader and
Yeah.
learning how to be a leader at a younger age, and maybe save myself from some big mistakes that I made in doing that. Um, but and it would have been pretty early in the career, because then I would have mapped out that career path and said, here's what I want to do. I I would have known what about leadership really appealed to me, and I would have cultivated that much earlier on. So I would say it was in my early 20s that I would go back to in that time machine, and I'd have less wrinkles too.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting. I think, I know this is about your career, but I think I would even go back into college
Okay. And what
because,
would you do there? What would you
well,
change?
so here's the thing. I think I might have been a bit young to go to college because it was valued by my family and I valued education. I was good at it, but I had no idea really what I wanted to do with my life. And so, I'll admit it here, I picked my degree based on what degree at that point, it doesn't happen anymore, that does not require any math.
I'm guessing you didn't like math.
Well, I wasn't very good at it, but it was kind of just how my brain worked, right? I'm fine with it when I can apply it to something, but when it's just theory, I didn't do well. But anyway, I mean, that just shows you where my brain was when did this, and I had a great time. Everything was great, but I just didn't have that long-term vision. Even a vision, it doesn't have to be a plan, but I didn't even have a vision of where I wanted to go. And so if I could go back, I would go back to college because I think, for me it was important. I think college is important. Um, but I might delay it a little bit. And then, knowing what I know now, which I didn't know then, I would apply the personal plan review that Alan Mullally, it has taught us how to do in his Working Together Principles and Practices, which I do apply to my life today. but I would put something in place that I could strive for. It doesn't mean I'm locked in by any means, but boy, oh boy, when I have that in place, um, I accomplish a lot more. I get further down the path a lot faster, and it gives me more clarity. So I don't know that. I mean, maybe this is a terrible answer because your brain is what it is when you're in your late teens, early 20s. And you just don't know what you
Sounds
don't
like
know.
we'd both be more purposeful, right?
Yes,
We'd
yes,
both be more purposeful in different ways, but we'd both be more
yes,
purposeful about it than we
yeah,
were. And, you know, the whole object of this question is that it's not something that's possible to do. But if you could, what would you do?
yeah, yeah.
All right, my turn to ask the question. What brings you joy in retirement or graduation, as we like to call it, that you found unexpectedly and that wasn't part of your baseline or what you thought you'd be doing?
Oh, I I think the thing that I love the most about it is that I get to decide where I spend my time, my energy, what my priorities are. And nobody else gets to do that for me. So that level of freedom I love. It also, there's a little flip side to that. So if my life isn't going the way I like it, I can only blame myself.
Exactly.
But I do love that freedom.
I would answer exactly the same way. And the only thing I would add to it is that it also allows me to do more of the things that bring me joy.
Yes.
So, what brings me joy is the ability to choose those things, to spend my time on those things that bring me joy.
Yes.
And it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
What brings me joy changes all the time. And it's awesome because it's flexible. I can decide, oh, now I want to put my focus here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so this is not on the list, Debbie, and I'm gonna hopefully not throw you a curveball, but what is bringing you joy right now today?
Right now, today, what's bringing me joy is we have just entered summertime in the Northern Hemisphere, and my pool has warmed up to the point where it's very pleasant to be able to go take a dip in the pool in the afternoons when I'm in the horrible Texas heat. We haven't hit triple digits yet, but we're close.
Oh boy.
So that's bringing me joy, being able to just
Yeah.
go splash in the pool. I mean, I remember thinking both in school and work times when there was a really nice day and you're just going, oh, I really just want to be at the beach, or I really just want to be at the lake, or I really just want to be at the pool.
Yeah.
I can go do that. I can go do any of those things. Beach takes me a little longer to get to, but lake and the pool, I got
Yes.
nailed.
That's fantastic.
Um,
Okay. It's my turn, right?
yes, ma'am.
What do you wish you had known about business management or leadership earlier in your life?
So many things. I
Mhm.
mean, seriously, so many things, which is why you and I decided to create Seasons Leadership. We asked ourselves the fundamental question: if we had known then, earlier, much earlier in our career, that what we know now, what would we have chosen to focus on? What kind of things would we learn? How would we have taken charge of our careers? And one of those key things was all these things that they make you wait, they being whatever organization you work for, make you wait to until you're a certain level or get certain permissions or in some development program. And I really would have glommed on to that because turns out I may not always love the structure of school, but I love learning.
Yes. Yes.
Those two are separate for me.
Yes,
and
totally
I
agree.
and love learning these new things and new concepts. And I would have glommed on to the great things about leadership and how to positively influence other people. Early on, I was of the thinking that we see so many people fall into, which was using management and leadership as interchangeable terms. They're not the same thing. And so earlier I would have focused more on the leadership aspects and less on the management aspects.
Yeah.
So that's what I wish I had known earlier, was that those two weren't the same thing, and how to go about finding out how to be a better leader.
Right. Oh yeah.
What
Everything
about you?
that all resonates with me. And I think I would just maybe add, or is that really that that there is no limit to what you can do. Now, there is realities, and then there is hard work involved. So, but don't like count yourself out too
Mhm.
early. You know, you've got to dig in and do the work. It's sometimes thankless, and sometimes really hard. And but the perseverance and belief in yourself can get you a really long way. And
And
that,
that's more about life,
yeah,
equally about life as much as it is about leadership, right?
yeah,
It's that applies to anything you're learning to do, but it also applies very distinctly to leadership.
yes, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of leadership, Susan, did you have any leadership role models that you emulate?
Well, if anybody's been listening to us for a while, this is not going to surprise them, but I really respect Alan Mullally's approach, and he's been super successful. So I believe it works, and I've used it myself personally and for our business, and I see that it works, and that is he does it in a way that's full of humanity and love, which I that's an important part to me. So so I really, you know, I guess that was kind of a give me question. How about you?
Well, you kind of answered part of it for me. So
Yeah,
definitely Alan Mulally for all the
yeah,
reasons you stated. And we do emulate him because we use his approaches, his working together, um, and the way that he does that with love and humility. Love everything about that approach, and we definitely use it and emulate him. Another, our resident seasoned leader, David Spong.
mhm,
I
mhm,
got the opportunity to work with David and for David for a number of years. And he's another one of those leaders that I've learned so much from and that I emulate all the time. And so I guess you could say my leadership style is a compilation of a
yes,
bunch of different wonderful, amazing, excellent leaders that I've seen go before me. And it started when I was at a young age. Believe it or not, Walt Disney was someone that I thought I was just like, oh, if I could ever work for him, and the timing, of course, didn't work out. He's no longer with us for quite a few years now, but his leadership style just really spoke to me. And so I try to emulate a lot of the things about him as well. So
yeah.
it's a compilation of a lot of different main ingredients from really key leaders, and then I sprinkle in a little of my own magic into that.
That is true. Isn't that true? I keep my eyes out on different leaders and watch what they do and take like, oh, they do this really well. They recognize people, or they have good strategy, or they can communicate well. And it's a continual learning process, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to add something to this,
Mhm,
because I don't think we only learn from leaders that we've worked with,
mhm.
but I think we also learn from people who we've led or have worked with
Absolutely.
us, peers.
Absolutely.
And I just like to be able to take all pieces from each of that. Like you said, what does this person do particularly
Yes.
well? Or what is this approach? Or what is their attitude on something? And be able to bring all those together into what makes an excellent leader.
Yeah.
And that's how we go forward with making excellent leadership the worldwide standard, is to gather all those separate pieces that makes people
Yeah.
excellent leaders, and then putting them together.
That is, I love that. It is, it doesn't matter. We've said this before. It doesn't matter what level you are, that we all are leaders. And the more examples we can see from diverse cultures and standpoints and every kind of different perspective, the better we are. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. Is it my turn now? I'm losing track.
It is your turn. And it's our
Okay.
last question for today.
Okay. What was the defining moment for you in your career and why?
I can only pick one. That's hard. Okay. I really want to pick two. I'm going to break the rules today.
Okay.
There's two that I think were key pivot points or defining moments for me
Yeah.
in my career. One was when I first started my career, because we grew up poor. My parents could not afford to send me to college. I got a partial scholarship and it wasn't enough. And I couldn't see my way to taking that opportunity because I couldn't see how I was going to pay for the rest of it. So instead, I joined the military and I went into the US Air Force. So I think a defining moment for me was that not being able to afford college and going into the military first, because it really shaped my young brain about structure and discipline and leadership at a very young age. Fast forward quite a few years, I was in a role. I had just come back from maternity leave after having my twin daughters. And apparently, right hand, left hand weren't speaking to each other, and they didn't know I was coming back to the office. So, like, oh no, what are we going to do with her? Because they had to give you a commensurate level job that you had when you went on your leave.
Yeah.
And so turns out that they were using this stuff called the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award criteria to assess the organization and see where things could be better. And they needed to send people to the training. And so they said, oh, great, we're sending you to the training. And the training was like close to a week long. I think it was 3.5 days. And so I end up in this room. Now, keep in mind, I am not a manager at all, any level of manager. I may have been a leader, but I was not a manager by title. And I'm in the room, and the lowest level person in that room that day was a director. It was directors, vice presidents, predominantly. And I thought, what the heck am I doing here? And why am I with all these people? I'm not this level. And I thought, you know what? What the heck? They sent me. I'm going to make the most of it. And that really, as you know, Susan, was a huge pivot point for me, because I became an expert in the criteria. I started using it inside the company. I became an examiner external to the company at the state level and then at the national level. And I eventually joined the board of the Baldrige Foundation. And it's a public-private partnership. And it led to me being exposed to so many excellent people all over the world, not just in the United States. Right. And so that was a huge pivot point for me as well. So those two, I would say, were mine. What about you?
Well, what's coming up for me is that you just never know when these opportunities are going to come, right? I mean, it could be very surprising. And so being open and just jumping in and engaging to what life is throwing at you sometimes is the best opportunities you can get. You know, you couldn't have planned those things, right?
No way. I never would have. I wouldn't have conceived of them.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll take two things too. And these are like just a short little statement that people have told me that just like somehow I heard, and it changed the way I thought about myself as a leader.
Okay.
The first one, I wasn't a manager, and I had this assignment, and it was to program manage a big effort. It was at Boeing. And the leadership team that I was leading, facilitating, were all vice presidents. So I was not in a management position. And so I just felt, like, you got to be kidding me. How, these people, and I believe they were all men at the time, know way more about all of this than I do. So I was not confident. And but my role was like facilitating, keeping everything going, connecting the dots, all of that stuff. And so I was doing it, and one of the guys, I don't know if he perceived that I was nervous, but he just said, "Susan, you're our leader in this, start leading." And for some reason I heard it, and it kind of hit a switch where I thought, like, it doesn't matter. They've hired me to do this job, and they think I can do it, even if I can't. Just do it. Because they need you to do it. They don't have time to do this work that I was doing. And it was vital work. It ended up to be, that's the kind of work that I did for my whole career.
Yeah.
It is, and there's different levels of doing it. This was pretty high level. And but for some reason I just said, get over yourself and do your job, because they need you to do your job. And it kind of hit a switch. The other time was when a colleague, so a peer, said to me, I was presenting something at a leadership team. I wanted to get approval of something, which I did. And so that it all went well. The way that the room was set up was because we were in conference rooms at that time. There was no virtual. Everybody sat around the table, and then the high level leaders sat around the table, and then the supporting staff sat around the edges. So when I presented, did the dialogue, got the approvals, but then I sat down on the edge. And so then everybody left. Everything was fine. Nobody would have mentioned anything, but a colleague, peer, said to me as she was walking out, "Next time, sit at the table." And it was just like, boom. I didn't even see it. And it was, if I don't think of myself as, a peer of this team, they aren't either. So it's just a mindset. And thankfully I had a colleague who cared enough about me to tell me that, and she was also
Absolutely.
aware of the power that had. So that's it.
That's hopefully you gave her a big hug and a thank you,
Yeah.
because that's definitely a defining moment.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. We're going to have to do
Yeah.
this again.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us on today's Seasons Leadership Podcast, where you got to speak with listen to co-founders Susan Arlen and Debbie Collard. We will be back with you with more podcasts soon.
Yeah. And if you have more questions, send them in.
Send them in. We'll answer them. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. We hope that you were inspired by this conversation.
And we invite you to join our community on Patreon. See the link below. There you will find more resources to help you on your leadership journey.
Make sure to join us next time for more conversation about leadership excellence.